Hello and welcome into Loftside Banter. Today's show, we are going to have a look at the start of the NBA season. We are pretty much through everybody's first game or so. We had some on Tuesday and we had some games last night. We'll take a look at the World Series. We'll do a little bit of a preview for that. And then we'll take a look at Week 8 in the NFL season and see what we have coming up for games. Now, with that being said, we actually had some breaking news about a couple hours that Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups and Heat guard Terry Rozier have been arrested for a gambling probe. And we knew that Terry Rozier had kind of been involved in some gambling, or at least had been under some sort of investigation. As we kind of look at the information that's here, 34 total people were arrested. The arrest results in a year-long investigation covering 11 states and involving tens of millions of dollars, says the FBI. Somebody in the FBI released a statement saying it was a mind-boggling amount of fraud within this case. Now, Rozier was on the bench last night for the Miami Heat, who did lose to the Orlando Magic. He did not play via coach's decision, whether that's because they had other people that were better than him or they knew something was coming down the pipeline. We're not sure. It seems a little weird that it came pretty much on the big opening day for the NBA. Now, I realize there were some games on Tuesday, but there was only 2 games, whereas last night there were numerous games that were being played. Former Cleveland Cavaliers player and assistant coach Damon Jones was among those being arrested as well. The other player that was involved, and if you remember correctly, and I'm going to look at the screen while I try to find his name, is Jontay Porter. There we go. The former Raptors center, Jontay Porter, was banned from the NBA for gambling. So this stems from that. When that kind of came out, they did this investigation, and it's been over a year now. And we now have arrests. We now have some names attached to it and everything else. So this is going to be a big story going through, because what it seems to be one of the big contributions to all of this was there were 30 bets placed in a 13-minute period for Terry Rozier under, and it totaled, there was 30 wagers in 46 minutes, from a professional bettor totaling $13,759. So it raised some red flags. It came in on the under for Rozier's points, rebounds, and assists, causing sports books to halt betting on the veteran guard. Rozier, then with the Hornets, thank you, Eleanor, played just 10 minutes before leaving the game, citing a foot injury. So that's kind of where the red flags kind of started on Terry Rozier. And what the NBA has stated, at least I believe the commissioner went on the Pat McAfee show and stated that he has asked betting companies to limit certain totals for things, especially on two-way players. So what a two-way player is, they're either up with the NBA squad instead of being with the NBDL or whatever the G League now, I think it's what it's called. And it limits what can happen with that. So if you're betting on yourself and you're a two-way player, there's a chance that you go, hey, I'm not making the money that the guys on this bench are making, so I need to do something. And it seems as if they're limiting that two-way players, because two-way players, again, if they get into a game or whatever the case may be, they're looking to probably make extra money. And I'm not going to generalize this for everybody. This is a very small percentage of NBA players and workers and everything else like that. It's 34 total people. So that's kind of what the NBA has done to fix some of these things. This is going to get bigger. There is going to be other players that are, and now we have Peugeot in the background here. As you can see, I'm in a very professional setting as it pertains to this podcast. But if you can keep your mind focused on me, or keep it focused on me, is that this is going to get a little bit bigger. I still think it's a very small percentage of the NBA. I don't think this is a league-wide problem. It's a problem. But there's also some reports that 4 mafia families are involved, which is never good. So whereas the sports gambling is legalized in a lot of different places, and I am one that partakes, it is also a place where organized crime can make a living, and where NBA players, which Terry Rozier, it weirds me out. And they're saying that most of this took place during his time with the Hornets and Pelicans. He's now with the Heat. Obviously, he was traded last year. But a lot of this seems to stem from other players or coaches, But Rozier he's on the last year of a $96 million contract, which should be plenty of money for anybody in theory. But yet here we are talking about all of this again because players seem to think they can circumvent rules. Now, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. We all know that. So this investigation, but the Chauncey Billups is in a lot of trouble, especially as a head coach. And this kind of ties into a Pete Rose as a manager, where he has decision-making abilities on players being able to enter the game, exit the game, play minutes, set starting lineups, everything else like that, practice plans, whatever the case may be. So Chauncey Billups, if this is found that he's involved in this and he's guilty, he's in a lot of trouble. I don't think Portland's going to go very much further with him as head coach anyway. The Portland Trailblazers last night lost to the Timberwolves, and now it was a closer game than probably what I expected, but 118 to 114 was the final score. Players that started, they don't have the greatest lineup of all time. Shandon Sharp, Drew Holiday, who's on the back end of his career, Donovan Clingan, who's a UConn product to that. A lot of people liked, only scored 8 points last night. It's a rough roster. And I think they're probably just going to move on to somebody that they have in the building right now to see what happens. Damian Lillard obviously didn't play. Scoot Henderson didn't play. Robert Williams III didn't play. So some injuries as well. But, the Trailblazers are going to be a disaster for the most part. So with all of that, let's take a look at some of the games that happened last night. We'll go over some favorites in both the conferences and stuff like that. Tuesday night, we saw a 2-overtime thriller between the Thunder and the Houston Rockets. And the Houston Rockets have the best or the highest average height of a starting lineup ever in the NBA at 6'11". So they started a lineup and it shows you the transition in this game, that there are I think the smallest guy was 6'7". So that's your point guard. Normally point guards are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", somewhere in there. There were some exceptions through the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. But this shows the transition that if you're a big guy that can shoot, handle the ball and stuff like that, which is a lot of them now, a huge percentage of the NBA are taller individuals that can do those things that guards normally did. We're talking about positionless basketball, and it shows with the Houston Rockets. But the Thunder ended up winning. They got their rings, nice-looking rings as well. And from there, they ended up winning 125-124 in double overtime. Last night, the Celtics, my team obviously, being based in Massachusetts, and everything else like that, we have a 117 to 116 loss. And they were leading. They had a great third quarter where they only let up 18 points. They played the 76ers, who had a full lineup, give or take. Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon didn't play. Coach's decision, again, back end of their career. Joel Embiid, 20 minutes, 1 of 9, 4 points. Joel Embiid is not the player that you want to build your franchise around. And fortunately for them, they were able to get a top 4 pick, hit VJ Edgecombe, who dropped 34 in his debut. Tyrese Maxey had 40. The Celtics lineup is going to sound weird to a lot of people. And to me, the Celtics are still in a playoff contention spot, at least of now. Now, again, they were winning. They gave up 42 points in the fourth quarter, which is where the problem stems from, that this defense was going to be a hindrance on this team. It wasn't going to be as good as it used to be. And I think it kind of proved that last night. Sam Hauser started at the power forward position. Power forward, whatever. Neemias Quinta, I got to get his name right, is your starting center at least, and he played in that position, was 7 of 8 from the field, had 8 rebounds, 17 points. For a guy that wasn't a starter 2 years ago or even considered a regular NBA player, not a bad game from him, especially when you had to be matched up against Joel Embiid. Derek White had 35 minutes, was 7 of 20, not 7 of 12, 25 points. Jaylen Brown, 25 points. Peyton Pritchard, 16 points. Now, Peyton Pritchard played the most minutes, had the worst shooting, which surprised me. Anthony Simmons came off the bench to get 13. Chris Boucher, 6 points off the bench. Pretty much the bench players, Josh Benoit, Xavier Tillman, Luka Garza, and Anthony Simmons are the 5 guys that played with Chris Boucher. And they were all in the negative except for Xavier Tillman. Now, Xavier Tillman was 2 of 8. The problem that the Celtics had last night was 3-point shooting, 11 of 43. The 76ers went 16 of 40, so 40% from beyond the arc. So that perimeter defense was not very good, but the Celtics shot 25%. And if you're going to live and die by the 3, that's what's going to happen. You're going to shoot 25%, that's what's going to happen, especially when you're giving up 40% to the other team. But encouraging enough to see the scrappiness from the players, and then to see Jaylen Brown come out and say, we gave this game away, and really kind of go after the team as a whole, which is what you want from the guy who has to step up and be the number one. The Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers played last night. Knicks 119-111. The Hornets beat the Nets 136-117. Not really that surprising, considering the Nets are probably in disaster mode as well. The Orlando Magic, a 4-point win over the Heat. I think Orlando's one of those early season favorites based on the moves at the end. And if I look at the box score at least a little bit more, and I apologize for keep looking over at the screen and stuff like that, but my notes can only carry so much. So you'll see me look. It's to get the right information to you. But Paolo Banchero, 24 points. Franz Wagner, 24 points. Desmond Bane, the big pickup that they made, 23 points. Jalen Suggs, 14 points. Wendell Carter Jr. was the other starter. He had 9. Tristan Da Silva had 16 off the bench. There's holes on this team. But Banchero, Wagner, Bane, Suggs are your 4 guys. And again, last year we saw them in the playoffs against the Celtics, and we saw them compete at least in the games. And remember, the Magic were beating the Celtics consistently in the regular season. So I don't think they're too far off. I think they're in the playoffs this year again. I don't think that's a question right now. The East is open with the injuries that have been happening with, Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum, to name a few. Obviously, Dame Lillard for the Bucks, but he's no longer on the team. Toronto, a 20-point win over the Atlanta Hawks. A little bit more surprising. The Bulls beat a team that I thought was going to be up there in the Detroit Pistons, 115-111. Now, Tobias Harris, Duncan Robinson, Jalen Duran, Cade Cunningham, and Azure Thompson were your starters. Those are your guys. Isaiah Stewart, 20 points off the bench. Ron Holland, draft pick, 19 off the bench. So again, they have a good team. Chris LeVert is on this bench. And then you kind of look at a team like the Chicago Bulls that has Josh Giddey, Nikola Vucic. Those are your kind of 2 headline guys. I'm looking down the roster. Again, a couple of guys off the bench. Kevin Huerter, who for the Kings was good. They seem like they're going to be kind of that playoff team again, but a big win over Detroit in the first game of the year. The Memphis Grizzlies 128-122 over the Pelicans. The Bucks 133-120 over the Wizards. The destruction of the number 1 pick, Cooper Flagg, who had 10 points, but they lose with Victor Wembanyama dropping 40, 125-92. Phoenix Suns 120-116 over the Kings. I thought the Kings probably had this game, whereas Phoenix still has a little bit of rebuilding to do after getting rid of Kevin Garnett. And then Minnesota beats the Portland Trailblazers 118-114, as I mentioned earlier. So for these teams and what we're looking at right now, in the Eastern Conference, your teams really, they're going to be up at the top of the standings. You're looking at the Knicks, the Bucks, the Magic. I'd say the 76ers are probably in that conversation. The Pistons and the Cavaliers are probably your teams that are there. So what did I say? Magic, Bucks, Knicks, 76ers, and Cavaliers. So there's 6 right there. I think the Celtics can sneak in to one of those spots. You're probably looking at the Magic or you're probably looking at the Magic at being kind of in that 6 range. The Indiana Pacers still to play. Obviously no Tyrese Halliburton. I think their team, depth-wise, Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin, Aaron Naismith, Pascal Siakam, and Isaiah Jackson are your top 5 right now. They picked up James Wiseman. They obviously lost Miles Turner, and they obviously don't have Tyrese Halliburton. They obviously don't have those guys. So I think they're probably outside looking in right now. Western Conference, Warriors, Timberwolves, Thunder are absolutely can repeat. I don't think there's any question about that. Rockets, the Lakers lost by 10 to the Warriors game 1. And I think that's where you're kind of looking at the Western Conference. Spurs, Warriors, Timberwolves, Thunder, Rockets are your 5. I'm not really sold on anybody else in the Western Conference. Lakers at full bore with Luka and LeBron, fine. But again, a 10-point loss to begin the season. We look at that. Luka had 43. Yeah, Luka had 43. Austin Reeves had 26. And DeAndre Ayton had 10. You're starting Gabe Vincent. That's what it is. I mean, Bronny's obviously not where he needs to be. You got 23 minutes out of Marcus Smart off the bench. He's going to be an agitator on that team. I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold on the Lakers. I like Luka. Don't get me wrong. Luka is an amazing talent. But with the rest of the roster around him, especially with no LeBron. Sorry, not sold on you. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this gambling investigation. It's going to be interesting to see how the season plays out. But basketball is back, and we saw a lot of different. VJ Edgecombe looked really good. We saw Tyrese Maxey having to take over. We've seen different things. Victor Wembanyama. I questioned in one of the other podcasts I had, was he still the guy with his injury issues and everything else like that? A 40-point performance in game one does a lot to silence that. I think he's still young. I think he still has time. I don't think he's horrible by any means. And then what will Cooper Flagg do after a 10-point performance in his NBA debut? Again, young, but that roster with the Mavs, if that puts together, okay, we got another playoff team. Kyrie's got to come back. Anthony Davis has got to stay healthy. But this will be a fun season. It will. From here, Friday night, the Celtics play the Knicks. For everybody here in this local time zone, let's take a look at the NFL. NFL, we'll go over the scores really quickly. New England beat the Titans 31-13 in Week 7. That wasn't really in question. It was closer early on. There were some mistakes that were happening. And again, that's the thing with the Patriots. We got to pump the brakes on the Patriots. They're not playing the best teams in the world. Cincinnati, we knew from that last Thursday, 33-31 over Pittsburgh, 35-7, the Rams over Jacksonville in London. Jacksonville's one of those, up and down, up and down, up and down. Kansas City, 31-0 over the Raiders. Pete Carroll said, this was not a game that I expected this to happen. Why weren't you expecting this to happen? You don't have a very good team in Las Vegas. Pete Carroll knows how to turn a team around. Geno Smith is one of the huge problems. No interceptions, but 10 of 16 for 67 yards. Kenny Pickett, 2 of 2 for 8 yards. Ashton Genty, 21. There was no, I think they had 3 first downs total or something like that. But Patrick Mahomes looked good. Again, this team will bounce back, and I don't think Kansas City is going to miss out on the playoffs. I don't. Now, the question is, can they come back to win the division? And they're already close enough. If we take a look at the standings here, for the Chargers that were 3 games up against 3 divisional opponents to drop 3 of their next 4, huge missed opportunity. Denver now has the AFC West. I'll do the rest of the games. We'll look at the standings. But before I get too far ahead, the Bears beat the Saints 26-14. The Browns 31-6 over the Dolphins. Tua may be done in Miami. They ended up bringing in Quinn Ewers after a bad interception by Tua again. So who's going to go where? What's going to, Mike McDaniel is probably fired. No changes as of yet. They made an announcement during the week. He's probably done at the end of this year. There's going to be a lot of clean out of this team. Tyreek Hill, who's done for the year, has to go. His salary has to get off Tua's salary has to get off the books. There's going to be a lot of changes in Miami, and there's enough pieces there to have a good year next year. But I don't foresee it for the rest of this year. They're done. The Eagles 28-22 over the Vikings. Carson Wentz couldn't beat his former team. 13-6, the Panthers over the Jets. The Jets are not great. You're probably going to have Tyrod Taylor the rest of the year there. The Broncos 33-32 win over the Giants. The Broncos scored all 33 points in the fourth quarter. The kicker from the Giants missed 2 extra points, which gave the game away. But 33 points in the fourth quarter. Your opponent still scores 13, and they were already up 19-0 or whatever it was. That's crazy. That is absolutely nuts. That shows where the Giants' defense is, and which is not. And again, we thought the Giants' defense was going to be better than what they are right now, and they've done absolutely nothing to help this team. Jackson Dart has had moments where he looks good. We've seen the Giants' defense look good against a good opponent, and then completely drop the ball the next week. Dallas 44-22 over the Commanders. The Commanders are now 3-4. Jaden Daniels injured again. The 49ers 20-10 over the Falcons. And then the 2 Monday night games, the Lions 24-9 over the Buccaneers, which I thought was going to be a lot closer. I thought it was going to be a lot closer. I thought it was going to be a better game than that. And the Seahawks 27-19 over the Texans. Bye weeks were the Bills and the Ravens. And then we take a look at the standings here, and then we'll go into next week. And then we'll take a look at the World Series. I'm trying to make these a little quicker for you. I understand that I ramble on about different things, and I want to give you as much information and opinion from me. And you're going to see some heated opinions in future shows because I feel like I kind of cruise through and I give you statistics. So we're going to make a change on that. But Patriots are at 5-2, lead the AFC East. A down year for the AFC East. I mean, it's been a down year for the last couple of years. Buffalo comes back off of a bye week. I'm glad that Buffalo had the bye week as a Patriots fan now, because there's still chances that injuries come up for the rest of the year, whereas the Patriots have a week 14 bye where some guys can come back. But they've won 4 in a row. Pittsburgh Steelers are still ahead of the AFC North at 4-2. Cincinnati Bengals are 3-4. Joe Flacco in that offense looks a lot better. and there's some hope in that building, I'm sure. Indianapolis Colts have a plus 92-point differential with Daniel Jones. They're 6-1. They're probably in the top 5 of the power rankings. Now, is this a true 6-1 team, or are we going to have things come back down to earth? I look at Daniel Jones and hope he doesn't have a Sam Darnold type year last year, where the last few games of the year he just sucks. So Denver 5-2, like I said, head of the AFC West. The Eagles are 5-2, are the head of the NFC East, which I don't foresee any team there. Dallas' defense is so bad that I don't think they're going to be able to catch them. The Washington Commanders have the most talent to try to catch up with them, but again, we just saw how bad they were the other day against Dallas, and the injuries to Jaden Daniels. What's going to happen with that? Green Bay Packers at 4-1. It was a tie. Head of the NFC North, the Detroit Lions are right there. Obviously, I think the Detroit Lions are probably going to pass them. Tampa Bay 5-2, head of the NFC South. Carolina Panthers at 4-3, have a nice bounce back after getting creamed by the Patriots. And then the 49ers have been able to hold on to that spot, but they're tied with the Seahawks in the NFC West, but they have the tiebreaker right now. 5-2 for both teams. Actually, the Rams are 5-2 as well. So that's a wide open NFC West. And oh, look, the Cardinals are 2-5. But the Cardinals have not lost games by a lot. They've lost games by less than 4 points. I think all of their losses by less than 4 points. So they only have a point differential of -1, but they've lost 5 in a row. Bad teams find a way to lose close games. That's all I'm going to say. Five straight losses. So going into week 8, the Patriots are going to take on the Cleveland Browns. Patriots are 7.5-point favorites. This is a little bit more difficult to me than most. The Cleveland Browns defense is pretty good. And with the Patriots with no running game whatsoever as to speak of as of right now, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than I think. Dylan Gabriel has been mistake-free since coming in for Joe Flacco. Like I said, out of all of the season categories, they're all rookies, which is great for Cleveland going forward. Now, they're 0-3 on the road, and they're coming to New England. I still think New England wins this game. I don't necessarily think they cover. Tonight's game, because it's recorded on Thursday, Minnesota Vikings are going to be playing the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are 2.5-point favorites. I believe we're still getting Carson Wentz. Now, the thing that we need to look at from the Vikings' perspective, they went out and they got rid of Sam Darnold. They brought in Carson Wentz because they were going to say, hey, this is J.J. McCarthy's team. And from what was reported as a 6-week injury is going to take 6 weeks, it looks like. The thing is, this team, even with Carson Wentz, isn't great. Justin Jefferson's great. They're on their backup running back, Jordan Mason, who up and down. Carson Wentz is just, I believe he's been past it for the last few years. And he looked good in a couple of games. And again, he's not terrible, but we're running into a situation where you're getting less than ideal quarterback play, both from the starter before his injury and now Carson Wentz. Kevin O'Connell is a very good quarterbacks coach. That has never been in question. He has revived careers and made people look better than probably what they were. But this year, he hasn't found it yet. And where do they go when JJ's ready? I think you have to go with JJ because Carson Wentz is not your future. Sort of like Joe Flacco wasn't the future in Cleveland. He's not the future in Cincinnati either, but with the injury to Joe Burrow, that was the best you had available to you. I think the Chargers, where they're struggling to run the ball now, are a little bit dependent on Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert has started to make those mistakes that we're used to him making. So I still think the Chargers cover in this game tonight, and they hopefully get back to winning because obviously it looked like they got smoked by the Colts last week. The Cincinnati Bengals, 4.5-point favorites on Sunday over the Jets. I think the Jets probably play this game closer than what a lot of people think. Joe Flacco, with the weapons that he has, is still a very good quarterback, but he's definitely on the twilight of his career. It's not a question about that. He's 40. And the veteran leadership and the decision-making is what they needed, is a guy to come in and not make those mistakes. So here we are. Now, we're at this point where, hey, use the weapons that you have, get us to where we need to go. Hopefully we continue to win, and then Joe Burrow can step back in, if that's a possibility. But I think the Jets keep this closer. I think this is one of the opportunities they have to win a game. Ravens and Bears, 1 o'clock on Sunday. The Ravens are 6.5-point favorites. Now, is Lamar Jackson coming back? Is this what we think is going to happen here? It seems as if that's where they're kind of leaning. The report is that he'll play, or looks like he's likely to play. The Ravens are 1-5. They need Lamar to come back. That doesn't take away from all the other injuries that they have. Lamar gives you a scoring offense. which you haven't had over the last few weeks. Caleb Williams and the Bears have looked better. They're 4-2. I think the Bears probably cover the 6.5. I'm not saying they're going to win. I think it's closer than a 6.5 point favorite, especially with the injuries on the Ravens. Next game, we have the Miami Dolphins going to Atlanta to play the Falcons. Falcons are 7.5. I'm going to take the Falcons here. I'm not going to trust Miami in anything. That nothing is going right for that franchise right now. There's going to be major changes. There's going to be major overhaul of that franchise. Buffalo going on the road to play the Panthers. Buffalo off of a bye week, 7.5 point favorites. I'm going to take that all day long. The Panthers have looked good, and Bryce Young is doubtful to play. You're running with Andy Dalton. Red Rifle, all well and good. Never had a problem with him. I used to pick him up as the backup in my fantasy teams because he was mistake-free for a long time in his career, but here we are. Twilight of his career as well. Rico Dowdle has really helped this team have a running game. Ted McMillan has looked great, but we're talking about the Buffalo Bills coming off 2 straight losses into a bye week. This is a get-right game for them. On the road, San Francisco at 5-2 are going to be playing the Houston Texans. I'm trying to see if the 49ers have any Brock Purdy news here. Brock Purdy's questionable. Again, they're probably fine going with Mac Jones, and he's played fairly well. 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Again, he's making mistakes where he shouldn't, and he's making plays that he doesn't look like he should be making. So he's kind of in that realm of weirdness in the NFL, where a guy will make great plays and then all of a sudden turn around and just make a horrible play. So going back to the line, the Houston Texans are pointing at home. CJ Stroud's playing a little better. So let's see what happens with this. This one's a coin flip to me, an absolute coin flip. I'll take the 49ers to cover that. I'll take the underdog in this one. I mean, better record, 3-1 on the road. We haven't seen consistency from the Texans. I'm going to take the 49ers. I don't think that's crazy at 1.5 or plus 1.5. The Giants and the Eagles. This is a revenge game for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts had his best passing game last week by far this season. They looked really good. Is this the turning point for him there? Again, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. The question this week in and week out of whether he's an actual passing quarterback. And he looked great. Saquon Barkley has to play a little bit better. But right now, the 7.5 point favorites. I'm going to take the Eagles in a rout. I think this one's going to be a rout simply because the Eagles want revenge on the last loss and to keep themselves, hey, we're the best team in the NFC East. No question about it. Hey, we're one of the best teams in the league. Tampa Bay going to New Orleans to play the Saints. I think Tampa Bay gets a get-right game here as well. -5.5. I would take that. Spencer Rattler's starting to make a lot more mistakes than what we were seeing through the first, 5 weeks of the season. The last 2 games or so, he has not been the greatest. He has 4 interceptions now. So something has to give here where Spencer Rattler is either going to continue to improve or he's going to fall down the well and be the quarterback that everybody thought he was going to be. He's kind of in that gray area right now. Questionable for Chris Olave, questionable for Alvin Kamara. So some major weapons also questionable in this. I think the depth that the Bucs have shown at the wide receiver position has been everything that they needed to be. And I think Baker Mayfield is in a legit MVP conversation. I wanted to hold off on that. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but I wanted to hold off on it for a while because Baker Mayfield has that ability to have really, really shit games. And he hasn't quite done that yet. 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions so far this season. I think he's got his best shot, which is great. For the players like Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold, those 3 quarterbacks, when they came out and for the first few years of their career, it looked like Bust City. I think one was Baker was first. I believe Sam Darnold was third, and I believe Daniel Jones was 6th. Now they all look great. I shouldn't say great for Sam Darnold quite yet because I still feel like he kind of has those games where he's just like, what are you doing? But he's played better, obviously, from his time last year. We saw it drop off, as I've mentioned many times before, but he's looked consistent, at least. Consistently good. Let's put it at that. Indianapolis and the Titans. Indianapolis are 14.5 point favorites. I think there's going to be some garbage time touchdowns. Cam Ward has not looked great the last few games. He, again, mistake-free for his first few, and now has looked terrible over the last couple. And I believe it was part of my take in Big Cat and stuff like that did a comparison of 2 quarterbacks between Cam Ward and Will Levis. And Will Levis had by far better numbers. Now, numbers don't speak to the whole story, as Will Levis made some really boneheaded plays at the end of last year. Or middle of last year, and the beginning of last year, probably. So I think this will be closer than the 14.5 just because of garbage time. 14.5 is a lot to cover, but Indianapolis has looked so good, I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm going to take the Titans plus 14.5. Another 4 o'clock game, you have the Dallas Cowboys and the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos, I think, are going to be able to score at will. Dak is going to have to keep this team in it. And again, another MVP kind of conversation, but the team's not good enough to put him over Baker. Dak has great numbers, but it's because he has to throw the ball a million times to keep him in it. The Sunday night game, we have the Green Bay Packers against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Packers are 3.5 point favorites. I'm going to take the Packers. The Steelers are confusing. They're very confusing still. I normally had said, and I've mentioned it quite a few times, that by week 4, week 5, you know who your team is. I have no clue who the Steelers are still. And we're going on week 8. They look like they're going to have a great season. They blow games late. Can't move the ball at times. You have Aaron Rodgers yelling at every single person under the sun while he's on the field. So who knows what this team is going to do. Monday night game is going to be the Washington Commanders going on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs are 9.5 point favorites. If Jaden Daniels does not play, I would take the 9.5. Kansas City Chiefs are the Kansas City Chiefs, especially playing a team that has been struggling as of recently, and they're 1-3 on the road, the Commanders. So let's go with that. So that's your kind of Week 8 preview. And now on to the Major League Baseball World Series. So we have the two teams. The Dodgers, which we knew about because they swept the Brewers. And then the Blue Jays came back from 0-2 down and 3-2 down to beat the Seattle Mariners. So some of the things that I looked at as far as being able to predict this, and I think it's a pretty straightforward one, to be honest with you. I would love to, I think it's going to be a decent series. And the reason being is the players that are playing out of their mind for the Blue Jays. So the Dodgers are looking to repeat. And this is the first time in 3 decades the Blue Jays have been in the World Series. So I kind of root for teams that don't have a World Series title, and I root for new teams to win, stuff like that. Obviously, none of this worked out in my favor, but for Major League Baseball as a whole, having the LA Dodgers in the World Series worked out great for their viewership, if you will. The Dodgers come in minus 220. You have to bet $220 to win $100. So heavy favorites comparative to the Blue Jays at plus 185. The Dodgers, though they struggled towards the end of the year and everything else like that, we all knew what kind of talent they had on this roster. We knew Shohei Ohtani is Shohei Ohtani, and he's going to be a player that just mesmerizes us every time he's out on the field, whether he's pitching and hitting or whether he's whatever. So I think the Dodgers repeat, which sucks because it's an LA team and I can't see it, but they are stacked with talent. Whereas the Blue Jays are in a weird situation with some of their players, like Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette, I don't think is going to be on the roster for the World Series. And it seems as if they already want to cut ties with him. But Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been playing so well that he is the key to helping this offense get enough runs to compete. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has a .442 average. He has only 3 strikeouts and he has 6 home runs, which is tied for the career most in the postseason for the Blue Jays organization. So he's hit as many home runs this season as their entire franchise's league leader, or franchise leader, postseason leader, whatever you want to say. The Dodgers have an abundance of pitching. So if we look at the first game, which will be Friday, Blake Snell will get the start. He's 3-0 in the postseason with a .86 ERA. So he's lights out. We don't have a confirmed Blue Jays starter. But I'm trying to look at some of the injuries too. Bo Bichette and Ty France are day-to-day for the Blue Jays. Bo Bichette led the team in average this year at .311, so it's not a a sneeze to say, oh, they can just leave him off the roster. Whatever the case may be, and why there's this back and forth between him and the franchise of injury, not injured, won't be on the roster next year, will be traded, will be whatever. Bo Bichette led the team in earned run average and runs batted in comparative to. George Springer has 32 home runs this year, so Vlad Guerrero wasn't even in the conversation as far as leading the team in these offensive categories. But Toronto's NHL and NBA teams are adjusting times so the fans can watch the Blue Jays, which I think is great. I mean, it shows, especially for a team that hasn't been there in 3 decades, to show that, hey, we want to make sure that you get the opportunity to watch the Blue Jays in the World Series. That's kind of cool. Dodgers are still big favorites. I believe Shohei Ohtani will probably pitch Game 3. But this will be held in Toronto. Game 1 will be in Toronto. Whereas the Dodgers were 41-40 on the road all season. So they're not a very good road team. They're just above 500 road team. And the Blue Jays lived to be at home, 54-27. Taking a look at the team stats, the Blue Jays have the advantage in average, hits, on-base percentage, whereas the Dodgers have the advantage in runs, home runs by almost 50 home runs more than the Blue Jays. So this team is going to have to put together strings of hits to get runs. Their home runs, I mean, they only had 191 home runs all year, comparative to the 244 for the Dodgers. Slugging percentage, ERA, whip, strikeouts, all belong to the Dodgers. So, taking a look at kind of some of the rosters here, Kevin Gausman, Shane Bieber, Trey Savage, Max Scherzer, Chris Bassett are the 5 guys that were probably in that starting rotation. Obviously, you generally go with 4 in the postseason. Alejandro Kirk, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Ernest Clement, Addison Barger, George Springer, Dalton Varsho, Nathan Lukes are all kind of the guys that are going to be carrying this offense. There's a few other guys in there. And then you kind of go over to the Dodgers roster and their depth chart. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Clayton Kershaw. Like, that is a rotation from hell if you're facing it. Now, Clayton Kershaw is kind of on that, again, back end of a career. Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Tommy Edman, Max Muncy, Mookie Betts, Enrique Hernandez, Andy Pages, Toscar Hernandez, and Shohei Ohtani. Like, and then you still have guys like Dalton Rushing and I mean, you have really good top 1 through 9 lineup, and then a complete rotation. And then I haven't even touched on the bullpen. You know, this team, for the struggles that it has a roster that is built to win and win for the long haul. That's what it is. So I think the Dodgers still win this. I think it's probably going to be like 4-2 or something like that. But we'll revisit after, for the next episode, we'll revisit and kind of talk about where they're at and what games are coming up, who's pitching and stuff like that. It's been a really good year for young pitchers who don't have a lot of regular season experience to come out and really show that they belong on a playoff roster. You know, Trey Savage pitched really well to keep them in it. And then you had guys like Connolly Early, and guys like Cam Schlittler for the Yankees, who pitched magnificently in that deciding game against the Red Sox. So, I mean, really cool to kind of see those young guys step up. Normally, you want every veteran you can to be up there to be able to handle the big moments, bright lights, everything else like that. But we've seen a lot of guys come in and really hold their own in a postseason game. So that's going to be something to look forward to for these guys going forward, especially as they get more and more time. So, with all that said, we're now done with this episode. We'll take a look at some of the other things. We're still working on that NBA special. And we're going to look at all the teams more in depth and stuff like that. It will probably happen closer to this weekend. So we'll do all of that different stuff. Again, a lot of the stuff of me being under the weather and stuff like that really sucks because it's the only thing that I don't want to sound like that. You know what I'm saying? So I apologize if you're listening to all that and everything else like that. But any questions, concerns, comments, you make sure you get to loftsidebanter.com. That's loftsidebanter.com and loftsidebanter@gmail.com for any questions, concerns, comments. And please email me, let me know. And past that, you have a good weekend, and we will review everything else, and we'll kind of take a look at how everything is going in the sports world early next week. Have a good one.